Lee Marvin remains one of Hollywood's most memorable actors, known for his deep voice, rugged presence, and ability to portray characters who carried both strength and emotional depth. His journey from a restless youth to a decorated World War II veteran, and eventually to an Academy Award-winning performer, reflects a life marked by resilience, inner conflict, and authenticity. Unlike many stars whose personas were carefully crafted, Marvin's screen image came directly from lived experience. The toughness in his performances was not imagined. It was shaped by hardship, courage, survival, and self-reflection. His career spanned decades, and throughout that time he left a lasting imprint on American cinema, influencing how strong, quiet, complex heroes and anti-heroes were portrayed on screen. His personal life, like his roles, was layered and human, showing moments of joy, challenge, loyalty, and change. This is the story of a man who brought truth to every frame he appeared in. Early life and family background. Lee Marvin was born on February 19, 1924, in New York City, into a family with social standing and history. His father was a World War I veteran who later became an advertising executive, while his mother came from a respected Southern family with long-established cultural roots. Despite this background of privilege and tradition, Marvin did not grow up in a structured or harmonious household. There was love, but also an undercurrent of emotional tension and high expectations. Marvin, spirited and independent from a young age, often pushed against rules and expectations. He struggled to conform to the academic and behavioral standards expected of him, resulting in disciplinary issues throughout his school years. Yet these early experiences helped shape his fiercely individualistic personality, one that never pretended to be something it wasn't. The same honesty, rough edges, and intensity that would later define his acting were already developing during these early years. A restless youth and search for identity. Marvin's school years were marked by a sense of restlessness that made structured environments difficult for him. He was expelled from several schools due to behavior that reflected impatience, curiosity, and a deep desire to experience life directly rather than through rules and instruction. While this caused challenges for his family, it also revealed the essence of Marvin's character, a person who valued freedom, authenticity, and learning through action. He was observant, strong-willed, and drawn to physical activity and adventure. Though formal education did not hold his attention, the world around him did. He spent time exploring outdoors, developing an awareness of nature, risk, and independence. These experiences planted the seeds for the grounded, unembellished emotional presence that later defined his acting. The struggle to find a place where he fit in would follow him into adulthood, but it also gave him a deep sense of empathy for characters who lived on the edge of society, war service, and the transformation of experience. When World War II began, Marvin enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, a decision that would fundamentally change the course of his life. Sent to the Pacific Theater, he saw combat in some of the war's most brutal environments, including the Battle of Saipan. During the fighting, he was seriously wounded by machine gun fire, an injury that nearly ended his life. The recovery process was long and painful, leaving both physical and emotional scars. But the experience also instilled in Marvin a profound understanding of the fragility and preciousness of life. The war taught him what it meant to confront fear, loss, and survival, and it shaped a depth of perspective that very few people possess. When Marvin later portrayed soldiers, fighters, or world-weary men on screen, he did not have to imagine what those roles felt like. He had lived them. His performances carried a quiet truth rooted in real experience, not dramatization. Rebuilding life after the war. After returning home, Marvin faced the difficult task of adjusting to civilian life, something many veterans of his generation struggled with. The war had changed him deeply, and ordinary routines no longer held the same meaning. He tried to find direction, working various jobs, including as a plumber's assistant. During this time, he discovered that acting offered him not only a livelihood, but also a way to express and make sense of the emotional complexities he carried. Encouraged by the opportunity to explore different characters and experiences, Marvin began taking roles in small theater productions. He brought to the stage a presence shaped by everything he had lived through: strength, vulnerability, and truth. This natural authenticity attracted attention quickly, and before long, he transitioned into film and television work. Acting did not just become his profession, it became a channel through which his life experiences could be understood and transformed into art. Emergence in Hollywood and early film roles. In the early years of his screen career, Marvin was frequently cast in supporting roles, often playing outlaws, military men, or tough characters whose lives carried shadows and complexity. Even in these smaller parts, his performances stood out. He did not need to force intensity. It came from within. Directors and audiences recognized something rare in him, a presence that conveyed both hardness and humanity. He could portray aggression without losing emotional depth, and quiet moments with as much impact as dramatic ones. During this time, Marvin also learned the craft of filmmaking, how to adapt stage instincts to the camera, how to work collaboratively, and how to shape a character not just through dialogue, but through stillness and subtle expression. These years were essential in building his foundation as an actor who could lead films not by theatricality, but by authenticity and grounded emotional truth. Breakthrough performances and rising recognition. Marvin's breakthrough came through roles that highlighted his ability to balance intensity with intelligence. Films such as The Big Heat, The Wild One, and Bad Day at Black Rock showcased his capacity to portray men who were shaped by internal battles as much as external conflicts. Critics and filmmakers began to see him not only as a character actor, but as a performer capable of carrying deeper narrative weight. Audiences responded strongly to the honesty in his work. He portrayed toughness without glamorizing it, and strength without losing vulnerability. His characters often appeared hardened, yet still capable of empathy, restraint, and introspection. By the early 1960s, Marvin had become one of the most respected figures among actors who valued craft over image. His rise was not sudden or built on promotion, but steady and earned through dedication, presence, and truth in every performance. Cat Ballou and the unexpected dimension of humor. In 1965, Marvin starred in Cat Ballou, a film that surprised audiences and critics alike. Known for intense dramatic roles, Marvin revealed a talent for humor and self-awareness that had rarely been seen on screen. Playing both a washed-up gunslinger and his villainous look-alike, he balanced physical comedy with emotional subtlety. The performance demonstrated not only his versatility, but also his willingness to play against his own established image. His portrayal was both entertaining and thoughtfully layered, leading to widespread acclaim and culminating in an Academy Award for Best Actor. The success of Cat Ballou expanded Marvin's career possibilities and further deepened the public's appreciation of his talent. It showed that strength and seriousness did not define him alone. He had wit, humility, and the courage to surprise. This role became a turning point, transforming him from respected actor to Hollywood legend, a defining presence in American cinema. Throughout the late 1960s and 1970s, Marvin became a central figure in films that shaped American storytelling during a period of cultural change. Whether playing hardened soldiers in The Dirty Dozen or introspective anti-heroes in Point Blank, Marvin brought emotional depth to characters navigating moral uncertainty. His performances often captured the tension between external toughness and internal reflection. The directors he worked with valued his ability to bring authenticity without unnecessary dramatics. Marvin rarely overstated emotion. Instead, he allowed silence, expression, and physical presence to speak for his characters. His work contributed to a shift away from polished, idealized Hollywood portrayals of masculinity, instead presenting strength as something earned through experience and shaped by vulnerability. In an era when film narratives were evolving, Marvin became a bridge between the classic Western hero and the modern psychological protagonist. His influence continues to resonate in today's film landscape. Craft, method, and on-screen identity. Marvin's approach to acting differed from many of his contemporaries. He did not rely on theatrical technique or elaborate preparation methods. Instead, he drew from observation, memory, and experience. He believed that truth in acting came from understanding the emotional core of a character and allowing that to guide the performance. His physical stillness, expressive pauses, and grounded presence made his characters feel real rather than performed. Marvin also understood the power of understatement. A single look or gesture from him could communicate more than extended dialogue. This skill gave his roles depth without requiring excess. His authenticity inspired many actors who came after him, particularly those who valued emotional sincerity over dramatic display. Marvin's performances demonstrated that strength could be quiet and that real toughness did not require showmanship. His craft remains admired for its clarity, intention, and human honesty. First, marriage and family life. Marvin's personal life unfolded with complexity similar to the characters he portrayed. His first marriage to Betty Ebeling began during a time when he was still building his acting career. Together, they raised 4 children, creating a family foundation that grounded him through years of professional development. Betty provided stability during the early, uncertain stages of Marvin's rise in Hollywood. However, the increasing demands of fame, travel, and long filming schedules gradually strained their marriage. Marvin's intensity, combined with the pressures of the entertainment industry, created challenges that were difficult to navigate. Despite their eventual separation, those who knew the family acknowledged the care and commitment shared during those formative years. Marvin continued to remain connected to his children, valuing them as an important part of his life. The experiences of his first marriage shaped his understanding of partnership, responsibility, and the balance between personal and professional identity. Second marriage and later stability. In 1970, Marvin married Pamela Feely, a partnership that brought a new chapter of steadiness to his life. By this time, Marvin was no longer a rising actor, but an established figure whose work was respected across the industry. Pamela, known for her intelligence and calm presence, provided balance and perspective. Their marriage was not without challenges. as Marvin's strong personality and the pressures of public life sometimes led to conflict. Yet the relationship endured because it was built on mutual respect and emotional understanding. Pamela supported Marvin through professional successes as well as health struggles that developed later in life. Friends and colleagues spoke of their bond as one marked by loyalty, honesty, and connection. It was within this relationship that Marvin found a measure of peace, grounding him during years that could have otherwise been marked solely by weariness and fame. Public scrutiny and the Palimony case. During the late 1970s, Marvin became involved in a widely publicized legal case that drew significant media attention. The case was less about personal conflict and more about broader discussions regarding relationships, partnership, and financial responsibility. The attention surrounding the proceedings often oversimplified the situation for sensational interest, creating assumptions and narratives that did not reflect the nuance of the real circumstances. Throughout the process, Marvin remained composed, focusing on honesty and dignity rather than public perception. Pamela remained by his side, demonstrating steadiness and strength during a time that could have been overwhelming. The case became part of Hollywood's history, but for Marvin, it was simply one chapter in a much larger life story, one defined far more by his work, integrity, and relationships than by headlines, professional respect, and Hollywood relationships. Throughout his career, Marvin was known for speaking plainly and valuing sincerity. When asked about his colleagues, including Cary Grant, he expressed respect for those who brought authenticity to their work, while acknowledging that actors approach their craft in different ways. Where Grant embodied elegance, ease, and charm, Marvin represented grounded realism and emotional depth. Their public images reflected different eras and styles of screen identity, yet both men were admired for bringing truth to their roles in ways that resonated with audiences. Marvin did not believe in comparison as a measure of artistic value. Instead, he recognized that every actor's journey was shaped by experience, personality, and personal expression. What connected them most was a shared commitment to professionalism and dedication to the art of performance. Lee Marvin and Cary Grant, two faces of Hollywood's golden age. Hollywood has always been a place where opposites attract, where polished charm meets raw grit and illusion dances with truth. Few stories capture that duality better than the quiet admiration Lee Marvin held for Cary Grant. To the public, Grant was the symbol of grace and elegance, while Marvin was the rugged embodiment of authenticity. Their worlds could not have been more different, yet Marvin's reflections on Grant revealed a rare honesty about fame, identity, and what it means to be a man in a world built on appearances. Through his candid insights, Marvin offered a glimpse beyond the glamour, a portrait of two men who, in their own ways, defined an era of cinema that celebrated both perfection and imperfection, a study in contrasts. Lee Marvin and Cary Grant stood at opposite ends of Hollywood's masculine ideal. Grant, always refined and immaculate, represented sophistication and charm, the kind of man who made tuxedos seem casual. Marvin, by contrast, was all grit and instinct, a former Marine whose authenticity came from experience rather than polish. Marvin often said that while Grant seemed born for the spotlight, he himself had stumbled into it. The contrast fascinated him. He respected Grant's poise, but found it almost otherworldly, something he could admire but never imitate. In Marvin's eyes, Grant was the ultimate professional, controlled, deliberate, and perfectly aware of how to use his image. Yet, that same precision made him seem untouchable, a figure sculpted more by discipline than spontaneity. Hollywood's two masculine ideals. In reflecting on Grant, Marvin unknowingly captured Hollywood's broader story about masculinity. Grant's grace and charm represented the dream of the perfect man, elegant, self-controlled, and untouchable. Marvin's grit and bluntness represented the opposite, the unrefined truth of real human struggle. Together they embodied two sides of the same coin, the fantasy and the reality of manhood in cinema. Both were authentic, but in vastly different ways. Grant taught the world that dignity could be powerful. Marvin proved that vulnerability could be just as strong. Their legacies endure because they represented balance, the idea that strength comes not from imitation, but from honesty. The decline of a legend. As Marvin aged, his once commanding presence began to fade. Years of work, war, and physical strain left his body worn, but his spirit intact. In 1986, his health began to decline seriously. He developed a respiratory illness after exposure to harsh filming conditions in the desert. The illness weakened his lungs, already strained from a lifetime of hard living. Though he received medical treatment and underwent surgery, the recovery was slow and painful. Friends recalled that he remained stoic through it all, never one to complain or show weakness. Even as his body gave out, Marvin's trademark humor and resilience stayed. To the end, he lived with the same fearless honesty that defined his career. A final farewell. On August 29, 1987, Lee Marvin passed away at the age of 63. His death marked the end of a Hollywood era, one built on raw, unapologetic masculinity. The industry mourned a man who had redefined what it meant to be a leading actor. Marvin's passing wasn't just the loss of a star, it was the closing of a chapter in cinema's history when men like him and Grant dominated screens through sheer authenticity. He left behind a legacy of truth-telling and courage, both in his roles and in his reflections on others. Those who knew him remembered not the illness that took him, but the integrity with which he lived. Two legends, one truth. Cary Grant and Lee Marvin may have stood on opposite ends of Hollywood's spectrum, but both reached the same destination: authenticity. Grant's elegance and Marvin's grit were not contradictions, but complements. Proof that truth wears many faces. Each man represented a vision of masculinity that still resonates today. Grant taught us the art of control. Marvin, the beauty of chaos. Their stories remind us that image and reality, glamour and grit, can coexist within the same soul. In the end, Marvin's reflections on Grant weren't just about admiration, they were about understanding. Both men, in their own distinct ways, lived and died, being true to themselves. A timeless reflection. Lee Marvin's words about Cary Grant endure as a rare, intimate glimpse into Hollywood's heart. He saw beyond fame and facade, recognizing the human being behind the legend. In his rough, honest way, Marvin paid Grant the highest compliment imaginable. He called him real. And coming from Marvin, a man who valued truth above all else, that meant everything. Together they symbolize an era when stars weren't built by marketing, but by presence, integrity, and talent. Their legacies remind us that true greatness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from authenticity. Eternal icons of contrast and connection. Though their paths never crossed on screen, Lee Marvin and Cary Grant remain forever linked through the respect one had for the other. They embodied two halves of Hollywood soul, the polished dream, and the rugged truth. Their stories continue to inspire because they reflect the dual nature of life itself: grace and grit, illusion and honesty. Through his words, Marvin revealed that even the most flawless icons carry hidden battles, and even the toughest men harbor quiet admiration. In the end, their legacies prove that greatness comes not from what the world sees, but from who we are beneath the lights. The legacy of Lee Marvin. Marvin's influence on modern acting remains profound. His ability to balance vulnerability with strength inspired generations of performers. He wasn't interested in perfection. He sought truth. Every scar, every rough edge told a story. To him, acting wasn't about pretending, it was about revealing. His respect for Cary Grant reflected that same understanding, that even the most polished exterior hides a human story beneath. Marvin's candor about Grant's inner struggles showed compassion rather than judgment. Both men, in their own way, proved that great acting comes from knowing who you are, not from playing who others want you to be. Final years and enduring legacy. In his later years, Marvin continued to work in film, bringing the same thoughtful presence and integrity to every role. Although his health began to decline, his spirit and dedication to storytelling remained strong. He spent much of his time with Pamela, appreciating the quiet moments that contrasted with the intensity of his earlier life. When he passed away in 1987, he left behind not only a remarkable body of work, but also a lasting influence on American cinema. Actors who followed drew inspiration from his honesty, restraint, and emotional depth. His legacy endures in the timeless quality of his performances, reminding audiences that strength can be gentle, courage can be quiet, and authenticity is a form of